episode 221 of the Various and Sundry podcast. I am your host, Matt Harmon, joined live from the Vault Studio, the beautiful campus of Grace College and Theological Seminary, by my good friend, my colleague, my co-host, and the man who is speaking in chapel tomorrow.
Mañana.
John Scott Sloat.
And I suppose by tomorrow we mean a couple hours ago, but because
Right.
the time that this drops, I will have already spoken.
Yes.
Right?
We record
Yes.
on Mondays typically, and you're speaking in chapel on Tuesday,
Which
is the day this episode drops.
yeah. I was at the cafeteria before I came here, and it was just empty.
Really?
So where is everybody? Because classes are happening this week.
Yeah.
I mean, they get Friday off for Good Friday, but
Yeah.
classes. Like, where is everybody? Are they all in Kansas City for the basketball tournament? Are they where?
We will get to that. Yeah.
Where is? So I'm a little nervous that I'm going to be preaching to an empty auditorium.
Well,
Audigimatorium.
yeah. I mean, chapel is still required. So, I mean, people have to get their chapel credits in.
Yeah. I'm just asking the question.
Yes. So, what are you speaking on?
So it's Holy Week, and so Brent and I are speaking. Brent from Indiana, our chaplain here at Grace.
Yeah.
We're both speaking. I'm speaking on Tuesday, and we're both doing like aspects of the cross, ironies of the cross. Okay. And so I'm doing Christ is King,
All right.
and how being on the cross is sort of his enthronement.
Okay.
And then Brent is doing I believe, a piece on the irony of forgiveness.
Okay.
From the cross.
Okay. I don't want to get us sidetracked,
Go ahead.
but have you paid attention at all to the stuff on Twitter about the exact expression you just used?
Yes, I was like, I've paid attention like an inch deep.
Okay.
And so
I'm maybe 2 inches deep. So
I kind of went like, I'm going to forget about this because I'm teaching on this and I don't want it to influence what I have to say.
Yeah.
I don't think I'm saying anything controversial tomorrow.
Okay.
But at least I don't think so.
Okay.
But I was going to actually ask you about that. Do you know anything about the Twitter spat that's happening out there?
From what I can gather, it seems like there are some people using that expression, Christ is King, in a way that is intended to taunt Jews in particular.
Okay.
So it's been weaponized as a sort of attempt to marginalize or dismiss Jewish concerns or something like that. So you have people – the analogy that's helped me is basically someone saying it's like Black Lives Matter. If you're just looking at the content of the expression,
it's fine.
it's true.
Yeah.
But with that an organization took that phrase and essentially weaponized it and gave it a certain meaning.
Sure.
And now there's a group there are groups on the far right who are doing that with the expression Christ is King. That's the analogy.
Okay.
I do not think it should have any impact on your message tomorrow.
I don't think so, although I do talk about the opposition of the Jews to Jesus in the midst of the trial before Pilate. But
Yes.
I mean, it's
a historical fact.
Yeah, it's straight out of John 18 and 19.
Yeah.
Like just
Yeah.
dealing with the text in front of me,
Yeah. So anyway, if you would like to contact the show and inform John your own opinions on this latest Twitter spat, you can find the show on Twitter at VNSPod. You can email the show, variousandsundrypodcast@gmail.com. You can find us on Facebook and on YouTube. And we would love for you to leave a 5-star rating and a review.
So the only tweet I saw about it was from somebody in the political world who has been indicted and pled guilty.
Okay.
So that they were tweeting about it pretty aggressively.
Gotcha.
And throwing covenant theologians under the bus about it?
Sure.
I don't understand. So I read that tweet. I was just like, you want to know what? I need to step away from this.
Yes. This is where it's helpful to remember that Twitter is not real life. I mean, it is real life, but it's like the smallest little slice of real life.
It's like the 5% of either end of the spectrum
Yeah.
talking to themselves. Like they have their own silos on
Sure.
there. And rarely do they cross over. And a bunch of people in the middle just reading the insanity on either side.
Yes.
That's me. Just reading the craziness.
Yeah, for sure. No, I'm with you there. All right, John, let's talk some sports. Obviously, the big sports story over the weekend, the start of the NCAA men's basketball tournament.
Yeah, started up this weekend.
And
or
so
last week, I suppose.
We are down to the Sweet 16.
That's right. How's your bracket?
It's a disaster.
What place are you in?
I think I am in 35th place out of 41 participants.
With the bottom two not filling out brackets.
Correct.
Okay.
I do think there are at least two people who have done worse than me so far. So, two actually filled out a bracket worse.
Three.
Okay.
I see a Chris.
Yes, that's Chris in
Covington?
Yeah.
Covington, Kentucky, Cincinnati, Ohio.
Yes.
Vincent for soccer.
Yeah, I think
we know who that is.
Yeah.
And then a John, not me, but a John's legendary back picked Longwood, who I believe is a 15 seed to win the whole thing.
Yeah.
That didn't pan out.
No, it really didn't.
So he has 10 points and has a possible 0 points remaining for him.
So he's locked in last place.
He's locked in last place right now.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. So
you're looking at a possible 109 points with a current 33.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've still got two Final Four teams left.
Okay.
So I have Houston and Creighton. So if one of them or both of them make it to the Final Four.
Did you go upset heavy?
On the one side of the bracket, I did.
Okay.
Yeah. My other Final Four teams were Auburn, which was not really they were what, a 4 or 3?
They were 3. Yeah. I believe a 3. Yeah.
And
3 or
then
4.
my long shot one was New Mexico.
What were they?
They were like a 10.
Okay.
10 or 11.
Okay.
So I'm going to blame looking at some of the analytics feeds on Twitter, the last, final, how many years the Final Four has consisted of teams that are in the top this and this of this ranking system of offensive efficiency, defensive efficiency, and that sort of stuff. So that's my downfall for looking at analytics. You, on the other hand, are doing quite well.
I am sitting 4th, tied for 4th, I should say.
Yeah.
So I have all 4 Final Four teams still alive. I think I missed out on 3 Sweet 16 teams and 2 Elite 8 teams so far. So we're humming along. Along.
So you went with chalk, basically.
I mostly chalk, although my Final Four – let me check my Final Four real quick. My Final Four is relatively Connecticut, North Carolina, Duke, Tennessee.
Okay,
That's my Final Four.
Duke's a 4?
Duke's a 4.
Tennessee's a 3?
2. Tennessee's a 2. Connecticut and North Carolina are each 1s.
Okay. All right.
So that's where we're at. Top leaders currently, Aaron in Warsaw, I believe, pastor of a church here.
Okay.
I believe he's in first. He's sitting at a full 50 points.
All right.
With a possible 178.
Yeah, that's high.
That's
really
real high.
Yeah.
And then we have who I believe to be my father in second place, who does not listen to the pod. I sent him the link on Thursday morning at the last moment. And he got in. I am now regretting that.
Yeah.
Because he will not stop talking about it. But he's in second place. And then we have Esther.
Yes.
In third.
In my life group.
In your life group. And destroying her husband, by the way.
Yeah.
So, those are the top 3 right now.
Yeah. So what games stood out to you in terms of just watching the games?
Well, really enjoyed Oakland over Kentucky.
Yep. That's one pick I actually had.
Okay. My wife had that pick as well. Enjoyed, is it Yale over Auburn?
Yes.
I really enjoyed Texas A&M. They played a fun opening round game. Mm-hmm. I can't remember who they beat specifically, but
and even their game against Houston yesterday was entertaining.
They play a fun brand of basketball.
A lot of up and down, high energy.
Those are the games that stood out to me. I wish I had picked Duquesne over BYU. So they're in the heart of Pittsburgh, and people from my graduating class went to Duquesne.
Okay,
and so there was a heart tug.
Okay.
toward Duquesne, but I don't trust the heart, so I went against it. But I wish I had. I wish I had followed it now.
Yeah.
How about you? Anything stick out?
Well, I think Purdue's win against Utah State was
Definitive?
yes. I don't know that it means anything. Like I don't take that as yep, they're definitely making the Final Four. I've learned my lesson not to trust Purdue, but it was an impressive win.
Yeah. Duke over James Madison was pretty impressive. 93-55?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I should have known better than to pick Wisconsin over James Madison. Don't trust the Big Ten.
Yeah.
So
ACC was 6-0, I believe, in their opening round.
yeah, it could have been. I think that they have 3 in the Sweet 16 or 4.
Oh my goodness, I believe at least 3.
So yeah, I mean that's what's interesting is the conference was getting trash for being weak this year, and then of course they end up with at least 3. It might be 4. I can't remember. Duke, Carolina, NC State. Is there anybody else?
Clemson's in there, yeah.
4.
Surprisingly,
Yes.
Clemson's in there.
And part of it is, I think, people also looked at that Virginia loss in the first 4 game where they just looked embarrassingly bad, like just embarrassingly bad. But I mean, the rest of the ACC's done great.
Yeah, yeah. How are the Buckeyes doing in the NIT?
They have made the quarterfinals, so they're in the final 8 of the
Final 8.
NIT.
Okay.
Yeah, they've won 2 games, played pretty well. Yeah, I mean, it's easy to kind of dismiss the NIT. I think it's just so interesting when it comes to the teams that are excited to be there and teams that aren't. You had teams that just declined invitations, said we're not going to play.
Yeah, something like 20 teams,
which I think is dumb. I really think that's dumb. But for Ohio State, I think one of the reasons that they accepted the invitation is like they genuinely seem to like playing with each other.
Yeah.
And so if that's your mindset, why not go to a tournament and have, a couple more opportunities maybe to play together as a team? Like, yeah, it's not the NCAA tournament. Okay, so what? Like, that's not the only reason that you play basketball is to play in the NCAA tournament. So, depending on where a team's at, it can be a really good experience.
Yeah.
And so far, that's been the case for Ohio State. Let's talk about the other college basketball story that we're following. Our Grace College Lancers are in the Fab Four.
The Fab Four, yes, because the other F word.
Final?
Yeah, final is copyrighted.
Apparently it is copyrighted for the NCAA tournaments.
Yes, as well as the third month's name with the word madness.
Yes.
And so we can't say that either.
Yeah.
So
I'm not really worried the NCAA is going to be listening to our podcast, so I think we're probably okay.
We're probably safe. I don't want to risk it. I can't afford a lawsuit.
Okay. So yes, Grace is in the Fab Four.
The Fab Four
of the NAIA National Tournament.
I changed that on the rundown today. Did you?
Oh, I didn't notice that. No. And so, yeah, they won their Sweet 16 round, and I think
in definitive fashion.
Probably can't even say that. Probably
in definitive fashion. They
yes.
won by what, 20 points?
Yes,
something like that.
And then in the, I guess this would be the quarterfinals.
That's right, the quarterfinals. Yeah.
The round of 8. We can
there
say
we go.
that.
Yeah, we can.
They did not shoot the ball well from 3, but ended up pulling. I mean, they won by 7, but the last 8 minutes of that game, they were up anywhere between 5 to 12 points.
Yeah, they just ran into that was a hot Evangel team that they beat.
Yes.
They were, I think, they came in the tournament at 15.
Yes, 15 seed,
and
made it all the way to the round of 8.
Yeah, and we had to put them down.
Yes. And so the other 3 teams that made the Fab Four are also 1 seeds.
Yeah.
So all the 1 seeds made it
chalk.
through.
All chalk.
Yeah. So
we should also mention the women's
Yes, our women's basketball team won the NCCAA
Yes.
national title.
So
The National Christian College Athletic Association.
yes, which had a cease and desist letter from the NCAA one time, and then they called the office. They're like, "Oh, did we send that to you? Yeah, you guys are too small. We don't care."
I didn't know that.
Yes.
But I can believe that.
I heard that at a charity golf tournament. Yeah.
And that's a good look for the NCAA. Let's pick on this small Christian school association. That's a good look.
Yeah.
So anyway, and they beat in the semifinals. They beat the 1 seed on a buzzer beater
And made SportsCenter
and
top
made
10.
the SportsCenter top 10. Yeah,
That was pretty fun.
yeah, good for them. Good for them.
And closed it out and won the final game.
Yes. So by the time this episode drops, the Fab 4 game will be played.
Played tonight, Monday at
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
6 o'clock Eastern.
And then if they win, the game tomorrow is at 8.
Yes.
And are you coming to the OCC to watch that, or will you watch that from home?
I will watch that from home.
Okay. I will be at the OCC.
Okay. I think they got a legit shot of winning it.
They do.
It's no
Yeah.
guarantee.
Yeah, they're a good team.
I've seen the other 3 teams, at least one game in the tournament, and they're very good teams with skilled players. So
We'll see what happens.
we shall. It'd be fun to celebrate a national title.
It'd be a lot of fun. Yeah.
And we've got baseball coming up here starting. I guess they already had the series that they play
The
overseas.
Korean. Yeah.
And then what is it? Is it Thursday this week?
Thursday is opening day. Mm-hmm.
It's crazy that it's March 20. That'll be 28th, 26th?
Yeah, 28th. 26th is tomorrow. Today's the 25th.
28th, okay.
This drops on the 26th.
Goodness. That just seems so early. Anything in March feels early for baseball.
Yeah. So Mets' first pitch is at 1 o'clock on Thursday.
All right.
I plan to be in my office watching the game.
A big baseball story is Shohei Ohtani.
Yes.
And there's some alleged malfeasance connected with potential connections to gambling. Is that correct?
Yes. Now, it's unclear to me, and other people may know more about this, but it's unclear to me. So the Dodgers, this all started with the Dodgers firing his interpreter.
All right.
So the guy that grew up in California that they hire to translate for, I imagine, Shohei Ohtani and Yoshi Yamanibo. I can't remember his name, but their new pitcher for who's also from Japan.
Okay.
He's the team's translator, and he had been the translator for Ohtani with the Angels as well. Mm-hmm. So they just brought him over, and they fired him and said they accused him of massive theft of Shohei Ohtani. And the initial rumor was that the translator had sports gambling debts that he asked Ohtani to pay off for him.
All right.
And so that was the initial story. Mm-hmm. As the story evolves, it seems like Ohtani might have those sports gambling debts himself.
Yeah.
And we're still unclear. MLB's doing an investigation right now. And, the MLB's in a pickle. They don't like players gambling on sports.
Yeah.
Historically speaking, particularly in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
And they don't like players gambling on sports. Yet this is a worldwide phenom and a good chunk of the Japanese money that's pouring into Major League Baseball right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so it's a little bit of competing values.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some tweets. Again, I don't remember who it was from. So take this for what it is. But some tweets attempting to draw correlations between huge bets being placed on games that Ohtani pitched and basically played poorly, pitched poorly and did not hit well. They're trying to make the connection of
he's throwing games.
Now, if you get into that level, it's over.
That's Pete Rose territory.
That's Pete Rose territory.
Yeah.
It's goodbye, you're done, see you later.
Well, of the major sports, I think baseball has been the most resistant to sports gambling. Like the NFL has pretty much embraced it whole hog.
Yeah, oh yeah. NBA absolutely.
NBA absolutely has. Baseball has a history with people throwing games. I mean, there's the White Sox or the Black Sox scandal.
Yeah.
There's Pete
100
Rose.
years ago, yeah.
So there's some history here, and so this would, I think, mostly get gambling out of baseball. I imagine.
I don't know, John.
There's so much money to be made. That's the issue.
I mean, think about 10 years ago, if someone would have said, in 2024, basketball and football in particular are going to be inundated with like these sports books, these online sports gambling sites, pumping major advertising money into these leagues. 10 years ago, I think you'd be like, nah, come on. No.
And we would have gone Black Sox, Pete Rose.
Yeah.
We would have talked about that. We would have talked about there's a 30 for 30 about Boston College throwing a game.
Yes.
You know.
Tim Donaghy in the NBA, the official who's accused of, manipulating games for point spreads and things like that. Like, so there was enough history where you're like, I don't know. But then it's like they decided we can't turn down all this money. Like there's just too much money available.
Well, a couple of things. The NBA and the NFL want their cut.
Yeah.
And the government wants to tax it.
Yes. Yeah. But it's only a matter of time. Like even if all this stuff with Shohei ends up being nothing, it's only a matter of time before you're going to have players in these different sports caught.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Trying to manipulate games.
Well, and was it Calvin Ridley in the NFL that was out for a season because he was gambling on sports?
I believe so. It might have been. Was it the whole season or maybe it was a half a year? I can't remember.
I thought he wasn't in the league last year, and he's a free agent this year.
Okay.
But what does that do with his contract with the Dodgers? Let's say that he's gambling on sports. Do they suspend him without pay for a year? Like does that void his contract entirely?
Yeah, I don't know.
Are those clauses in there? I'd imagine they would be.
I don't know. I mean, and would they be able to get any of the guaranteed money back? I mean, like, there's guaranteed money, and then like.
Oh yeah, no. Baseball, his $700 million is fully guaranteed. Baseball's fully guaranteed.
And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure they would. My guess is this is what would happen. They would take it to court. It would be settled out of court quietly for some sort of compromise amount. That no, you're not getting the full $700 million, but we'll pay you $50 million and it all goes away. For a guy who can't play again. I mean, if it gets to that level,
ban him from baseball.
Right? If it's banned from baseball, yeah, I don't know. I guess I don't know what's in those contracts to say that if you're banned from baseball for something like that, that it nullifies the contract. I don't know.
Well, and I think they're moving and I'm talking out of turn here. I'm not quite sure, but I think the Oakland A's are moving to Las Vegas.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah, Oakland just can't hang on to teams.
Oh, yeah. It's a disaster.
All right, John. That's a long sports segment. You ready to move on?
I think so. I think we covered all the sports.
And then some, yes.
I think we settled sports.
Yep, got that figured out. All right. Today is our final installment in our series on resurrection in the Old Testament. This is part 3. And we are going to look at Daniel 12. So we are doing this series in preparation, obviously, for Easter, which is coming up this Sunday.
Resurrection Sunday, yeah.
Yeah, see.
You like calling it Easter?
Here's why. I like to distinguish it because to me, every Sunday is Resurrection Sunday. I mean, that's what we're actually celebrating, really.
I see.
And so I feel like if you just call it Resurrection Sunday, it feels like, well, this is the Sunday we celebrate the resurrection.
And all the other Sundays we don't talk about it.
Yeah. Now, I know that's not entirely what's being said, but that's why I get the problems with Easter, but I like distinguishing it as this is celebrating this in a focused and special way, and every other Sunday is an echo of that.
So let me ask you that. This is far less important.
Okay,
but
good.
Easter candy. Any faves?
Reese's eggs. Reese's peanut butter cup eggs.
Like the flat eggs, basically?
Yeah.
Those are good.
Oh, amazing.
Caramel Cadbury for me. I like a good Cadbury egg.
Yeah.
And I'll alternate between the cream and the caramel, but I think I prefer the caramel.
I was never a fan, by the way, of the
yellow Peeps.
No, not those either. But just like the solid chocolate bunny, like just solid milk chocolate.
Oh, it's a stomach ache in pretty packaging.
Yeah,
it's,
I just never.
No matter the age.
Yeah, never appealed to me. Give me some Reese's eggs, and then I'm good to go.
Yeah, give me a lot of small pieces of chocolate, not one big one.
Yeah. Easier to manage your intake that way.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. Well, that's a perfect segue into Daniel 12.
Yeah.
You want me to read verses 1 to 3 here? Or?
Let's do it.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Daniel 12, 1 to 3. At that time shall arise Michael, the great prince, who has charge of your people, and there shall be a time of trouble, such as never has been since there was a nation till that time. But at that time your people shall be delivered, everyone whose name shall be found written in the book. And many of those who sleep in the dust of the earth shall awake, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. And those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever.
All right. You had a strategic pause in there after sleep in, and it just sounded funny to me.
So
those who sleep in? What's wrong with sleeping in?
Yeah. You want to know what? On the ESV app that I'm reading from, they put big spaces in with like the footnotes.
Okay.
And or the cross references, and that always makes me pause. Like I just can't help it as I read it that it causes me to pause.
Gotcha.
And when I print on manuscript to read verses, I actually print the verses on there,
right,
so that I don't have those like I do in my Bible, because it causes me to stumble as I read, as you heard a couple of times as I read that passage. Those who sleep in, the dust.
Yeah. Yeah. Just really nervous about that. I'm like, am I supposed to be up every morning by 6? Like,
well, I
I know you are, but
yeah.
All right. So this is again one of the more explicit resurrection texts in the Old Testament. But okay, John, as you were reading through that, what were some things that stood out to you?
Well, I don't know who Michael is. The great prince who has charge of your people. That was one thing that stood out to me.
Yeah.
And then the resurrection of both those to everlasting life and some resurrection to everlasting contempt.
Yeah.
That feels different and unique. So those are a couple of things I could probably.
Yeah. So Michael is the archangel.
That's who I assumed.
Yep.
But
Yep. That's who that is. It's interesting. One of the things you see in Daniel is this idea that nations have like an angel in one sense who is in some way responsible for that particular nation. And Michael is identified as that for Israel. And and then the other thing you brought up, the resurrection both directions, right? So everyone gets raised. It's just a matter of what direction you're going.
And then they get sorted, basically.
Gets sorted out, yes. So it is even before we get to that, though, one of the things we see in this passage is the idea of people's names being written in the book.
Yes. What book are we talking about?
Yeah, I mean, that pretty clearly seems to be what other passages talk about as the book of life.
Okay, so those that have everlasting life get their names written down.
Yeah. It's a way of talking about, in one sense, the being in the books as a citizen of God's kingdom, as a citizen of heaven, so to speak. That you are on the official list.
Yeah. You can get in.
Yes. Yes.
And do you think that's a literal book? What's your? I mean, this portrait of I can see that I caused you pain just now. I know this portrait of Daniel is just like, I don't know what the heck's going on at some level, but is your sense that this is literal? Like there's a
like an actual physical book.
Yeah, or maybe a big scroll or.
My guess is no.
Okay.
I think it's a metaphor, a figure of speech. But I could be wrong.
Okay.
That's not a hill I want to die on. So it does show up again in Philippians 4:3.
Okay.
Where and it's mentioned other places as well, but Paul talks about people whose names are written in the book of life.
Mm-hmm.
Moses, when he is praying for Israel after they've sinned with the golden calf, he asks God, blot my name out of your book as a sort of like, if you have to bring judgment, basically remove me from the book of life, but keep Israel. And so this idea of there's a book that God keeps that is an official list of his people in heaven goes back well before this in the biblical narrative.
And I know we talked about Moses, but we also talked about Israel. So is in your sense, if we're going to continue the metaphor, an individualist, or is it?
I think it's an
individualist.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. I do. So another key piece here is I think there's an intentional allusion back to Genesis 2 and 3. They're in verse 2 when Daniel writes, "Many of those who sleep in the dust."
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, God forms Adam from the dust in Genesis 2, and then in Genesis 3, as part of pronouncing judgment, he says, "For you are dust, and to dust you shall return," talking about his death. And I think
so. These are people who have died.
Yes, making it clear that
sleep is a metaphor here.
Yes, indeed. And then just the contrast here, right? Everlasting life, and others, or some, to shame and everlasting contempt. It sure seems like this is another passage that would eliminate the kind of annihilationist view that you just cease to exist, like that there's no ongoing conscious experience of God's judgment. You just stop existing. But passages like this and then the parallel in Matthew 25, I think, when you contrast everlasting life with everlasting punishment or everlasting death, then I think that, to me, makes it hard to make the case for the annihilationist position.
Yeah, which is I guess it's not a super popular position, but it's out there.
It is. John Stott was
I was about to bring up
known.
John Stott held that position.
Yep. Yeah. So I want to talk about verse 3 in particular, because I think there's a few noteworthy things.
Okay, those who are wise shall shine like the brightness of the sky above.
Yes. And finishing out, and those who turn many to righteousness like the stars forever and ever. So there's a good old allusion to a previous Old Testament text there, and it's one of my favorites.
In the first half or the second half or both?
Actually, it's both halves.
Okay.
Really more the second, I suppose, but Isaiah 53.
Of course.
This is Isaiah 53, verse 11. Out of the anguish of his soul he shall see. Side note, the text of Isaiah 53 found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, as well as even some Septuagint, so the Greek translation manuscripts have see light and be satisfied. In fact, there's a little footnote there in your ESV.
There sure is.
By his knowledge shall the righteous one, my servant, make many to be accounted righteous, and he shall bear their iniquities. So that's picked up in Daniel 12.
Yep.
The idea of those who turn many to righteousness. So I think part of what's fascinating there is if you read Isaiah 53 in light of what Daniel 12 does with it, it's seeing resurrection in Isaiah 53. But so here in Daniel 12, I think that's picking up that language and making explicit what Ezekiel makes implicit in his own writing. So Daniel 12, the idea of making many righteous. And then the other interesting piece is the idea of shining like stars.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know where that idea is alluded to in the New Testament?
Ooh. Not off the top of my – I mean, it sounds familiar, but not off the top of my head.
It's in Philippians.
Is it Philippians? Oh, my goodness.
Philippians 2, verse 15. Philippians 2, verse 15. Paul is writing here, that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God, without blemish in the midst of a crooked and twisted generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world. That could also be translated as stars.
Interesting.
And so
ESV does not have that cross-reference.
Yeah, that's disappointing. But, so I think the point of it being picked up in Philippians 2 is that what Paul is saying is those who are joined to Christ already, in an inaugurated sense, because they've been spiritually raised from the dead, they've been brought from spiritual death to spiritual life, already spiritually shine as lights, shine as stars in anticipation of their full resurrection, bodily resurrection. And that would be consistent with John chapter 5, which uses some of the same language, not shining like stars, but this resurrection to life in John 5, where Jesus talks about essentially inaugurated eschatology, where he says, a day's coming when people who are in the graves will hear the voice of the Son of God and be raised to life. And then he goes on to make it clear that believers already experience some form of resurrection in this life. It's an inaugurated sense. It's a spiritual resurrection of being brought from spiritual death to spiritual life. That's John 5, 28 and 29 in particular. So Daniel 12 helps kind of set the stage for some of the resurrection discussion in the New Testament.
Would Jesus' claims allude back to this? I'm the light of the world, things like that. Would that have a maybe lesser homage to Daniel 12 here?
Well, it certainly taps into that larger theme of light. Yes, I mean, light is one of the most common metaphors used for God and his presence as well as his glory. In fact, this weekend you were not in our home church.
I was not, no.
But Ben, our worship ministry leader, preached on the Transfiguration. And did a great job with it. And part of what we see there is Jesus sort of pulling back the veil and showing his light. His face is transfigured. It is illuminated, revealing his divine identity. And it's displayed through his face shining like the sun. And so, of course, that imagery gets picked up all throughout Scripture. And so us shining like stars is a reflection of what of God's own light being reflected in us. So, I mean, there's a lot there in Daniel 12. We've only scratched the surface. But anything else you want to add before we move on?
I don't think so, no. I thought that was wonderful.
All right. Time now for This Day in Sports History.
All right, This Day in Sports History, March 26th, 2024.
Yeah.
That's where we're at.
Yeah.
In the big calendar.
World.
1973, 35th NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. UCLA beats Memphis 87-76. The Bruins' 7th straight title. I can't even imagine that today.
Different era.
Future Hall of Famer, famed center Bill Walton, tournament MOP, most outstanding player, for a second consecutive year, scoring 44 points in the championship game.
Yes.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I think it's just hard. Like, he was before my time. I mean, obviously, 73 was the year I was born. So
Okay.
I never really saw him. My only memories of watching him play basketball was when he was in the very end of his career on the bench with the Celtics. And he was not good. He's injured and everything. But
I've always known him as a commentator.
As a weird commentator.
Yes. Well,
a stoned commentator.
Yes. I think he's just weird generally.
Yes.
I've heard some stories about him.
Oh, yeah.
And he's a pretty weird guy.
He is.
But definitely unique, interesting commentator, for sure. 1979, 41st NCAA Men's Basketball Championship. Michigan State beats Indiana State. 75-64 marks the start of a rivalry between future Hall of Famers Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. Highest rated game in history of televised college basketball. At the time or still?
I think still.
Wow. Okay.
Yep.
By the way, have you seen the new Larry Bird television commercials with Mayhem?
Yes. Yes.
They're very good.
Yeah.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
2005 in the NCAA men's basketball. I feel like I'm in Groundhog Day. Regional finals. Louisville and Illinois make tremendous comebacks to force overtime in advance. Louisville trailing by 20 to West Virginia completes an amazing come-from-behind 93-85 win. Not particularly. I mean that's a decent margin. Illinois trailing by 15 with just 4 minutes to play went on a dazzling 20-5 run to send Arizona to a crushing 90-89 defeat.
I remember that game. The Illinois game.
Yeah, those are big games. I remember this next one. 2006, George Mason stuns number 1 seed Connecticut 86-84 in overtime to become the first 11 seed to reach the men's Final Four since LSU in 1986.
Yeah,
I remember that.
I do too.
Big Baby Davis, right, was on those George Mason teams.
That sounds. Well, wait.
Or was it before that?
Wasn't Big Baby Davis, was he George Mason or was he LSU?
I thought he was George Mason.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong. 2014. Is that a mistype?
Nope.
Is that a mistype? Okay.
No.
Larousse World Sports Award. Did I say that right?
Yep.
Okay.
Sure.
Oh boy. Istana Budaya Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia.
Kuala Lumpur. That's a city in Malaysia.
Is it?
Yes.
Okay. Sportsman Sebastian Vettel. I did not say that right. Sportswoman Genzib Debadba, Team Germany men's national football. I have no idea what I just read.
I think it's like the ESPYs, but just international. So like sportsman, sportswoman, team of the year kind of stuff.
Okay. Clearly that was meant to befuddle me. 2003 WPL cricket final. Brabourne Stadium, Mumbai. Indians win inaugural tournament, beating Delhi Capitals by 7 wickets with 3 balls to spare. Player of the match, Nat Skirvbrunt?
Skirvbrunt? I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, that's what. He's on the Mumbai Indians, just to be clear.
Yeah.
That's what I got.
Okay.
That's all that's there.
Who do you like?
I kind of like Magic and Larry.
Yeah, that seems to me to be the way to go.
Magic and Larry, yeah.
One thing you liked.
So it's been alluded to a few times in this pod. I spent the weekend in Columbus, Ohio with my wife's grandparents and got to go to Polaris Grace Polaris Church. I'm not sure which goes first.
It's Grace Polaris.
Grace Polaris Church. And
the mothership.
See Zach in Ohio preach, which was which was fun. It was particularly fun as Zach gets up to give instructions for communion afterward, which, if you know Charis Fellowship Communion, is an intense ordeal.
Yeah.
My wife leans over to me and goes, "Wait, they're leaving for this, right? We're not participating in this foot washing bit, are we?" And I was like, "Yeah, they'll go to another room and we'll get the heck out of here." So,
yes, indeed. I have never been to the mothership on a communion Sunday.
So they have one service instead of two, and so it's a packed house. And then Zach preaches. They do the full orchestra like they always do.
Yeah.
And then everybody goes over to that other building they have, and they have a meal together. Mm-hmm. And then they wash feet, and then they take the bread and the cup.
Yes.
I think it's important that they have the meal and then wash feet.
Yeah, you don't want to go the other direction.
You do not want to go the other direction. And in fact, I've heard that you could almost add a fourth fold to that communion, which is the hand washing after you wash feet.
There you go. All right. So my one thing I liked is I just received – I haven't read this yet, but I've been looking forward to this book. Just got it in the mail. IVP sent it to me. It's called The Return of the Kingdom, A Biblical Theology of God's Reign by Stephen Dempster.
I like Stephen Dempster.
He's terrific. And so this is in the Essential Studies in Biblical Theology series, the same series that my Rebels and Exiles is in. And this has been one of the volumes I've been looking forward to. So it's just hot off the presses. Dempster is one of my favorite authors to read when it comes to biblical theology. And he is I'm sure it's going to be outstanding.
Yeah. How many illusions do you think Lord of the Rings he has in here? It feels like it's,
I don't know, but if you call it The Return of the Kingdom, I think you're certainly going for that motif.
Yeah, absolutely. It feels like you need a good 5 to 7 through.
Yeah, or at least one a chapter.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to work in some Aragorn, some some Gandalf, some Frodo,
some Way of the Dead. Yeah,
maybe even some Boromir and Faramir.
Mm-hmm. The Steward.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And Gimli, of course. You got to get Gimli in there just for comedic relief.
King Under the Mountain sort of motifs as well. Yeah. I took a class with Stephen Dempster when I was a summer.
I remember you saying that. Yeah.
And you told me the story. I don't know if you remember this, but you went and mentioned me to him at ETS that following year. Did you know this?
I don't know that I remember this.
And
maybe I did.
He said name stuck out to him because he learned Greek from somebody named Sloat.
Yes, I do remember that now. Yes, that's right. So that is my one thing I liked. One thing we liked.
Yeah.
All right, John, we have talked a lot of basketball and a little bit of baseball. We have talked about resurrection in Daniel 12. We have talked about Magic and Bird and the start of their rivalry in the 79 NCAA championship game. We have talked about your weekend in Columbus. And we've talked about Stephen Dempster, Return of the Kingdom. So I think, by definition, we have covered our various and sundry topics. And so all that's left to say is, until next time, the Lord bless y'all real good.
Later.